So welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at a brand new game from Legion Wargames. And this game is called...
I will not say Decisive Victory 1918, Volume 1.
Okay.
That is the name of the game. This is nothing but a tagline there at the end.
So, new game is Soissons, July 1823.
I could never say that.
July 1823. July 18
18
through
through 23.
So
1918.
1918. So, yes. This is a brand new two-player World War I operational war game from Legion Wargames. And this is Volume 1, like you said, of a new series. So they're hoping that this does well, is well received, and there's more coming. So, which I'm also hopeful for, because this was very enjoyable. Spoiler
Very
alert.
enjoyable, yes.
Game's designed by a gentleman called Tim Gale, who's... I think this is the first game of theirs I've played. I don't know if it's their first designer, but it's not a designer that I'd heard of before.
Yeah, I don't know that I have either. The name is not familiar.
No, so
no offense, but it's not familiar.
Yes.
But it is familiar now, and I look forward to whatever happens.
Yes, I definitely want to see more of this as well.
Yeah.
So, we've been playing a lot of World War I games, part of our Guns of August event, where we're trying to get through a lot of our World War I backlog, so to speak.
We have a lot.
Part of that, doing that was inspired by this game and a bunch of others, because there was a few new World War I releases that came through the summer, and this is one of those. And Randy, who's the owner of Legion Wargames, was very excited for this game, and also very excited for the series to come as well. And we're super mega excited for it, and wanted to kind of. He delayed an order so he could kind of slip this in for us. So I'm very grateful that we got this game and that we've been able to kind of play it, because so far we've played Paths of Glory, Lamps Are Going Out, and we played Mons 1914 as well.
Yeah, so this is the fourth game we played, kind of in this Guns of
The
August
two most recent that we've played have been the big,
strategic
strategic, all of Europe, and so this is going back to a single battle. Hex encounter two-player war game. That being said, this could very easily be played solitaire. Just play both sides, no big deal.
Well, and we talked when we were playing. This is one of those games, it's similar to an East Front game, where, one side, the Germans, the Central Powers, are kind of on the defensive, and you're really trying to prevent the Entente, which in this game are the French, some British units, and I think some American units.
There's a very small contingent of British and Americans.
Because this is 1918.
Yeah,
so
it's mostly French, though, yeah.
And so you're trying to prevent them from capturing certain hexes or getting a good order unit off the board. So it's one of those games. You put up a staunch defense, do a fallback.
Yes.
Move into good terrain, better defense.
You've got to make as the Germans, you have to make a very smart rearguard action here, and then dig in. Probably you're going to be right on the cusp.
Yeah, this one I think every time, in my opinion, is going to come down to the wire, unless setup is done incorrectly.
Yes.
We learned some things about that.
Yeah, the first time you play this, the setup isn't free setup, but there are choices to be made, and it is easy to mess it up.
Very easy to mess it up.
If you don't go all the way to the roads in the north or in the south, it's much easier to get outflanked. And if you get outflanked, things can go bad real quick.
Well, and really there are two roads going east and west, and if the French can get there and be in good order, man, it's tough to stop.
Yes.
So the other cool thing I like about that concept of the fallback, the defense, the desperate struggle, a lot of the mechanics really are made for that concept.
Yes.
And we'll talk a little bit more about those, but the thing I found so interesting was the CRT is split between, you roll your dice with a whole bunch of modifiers, and the results are split. And the attacker gets to decide either I'm going to take one loss and you're going to take one loss. And then there's retreats and there's disruptions or disorganizations. Yes. Or you can say, I'm going to take two on my own forces and you're going to take two.
Yeah, those X results give the attacker the choice, which I think is cool. I don't know if I've seen that before in a game.
And it really works well at the scale and with the situation. But the very cool part about that that's kind of added on is the defender's choice to say, no. I'm not going to take that second loss. I'm going to
retreat one space instead.
I'm going to retreat a space. And so it's a choice. And the reality is the attacker's, your strength's going to be spent eventually.
Yes.
So you have to manage that. You can't just full out, guns a-blazing, go every time. Oh, you're losing 2. I'm going to lose 2 because you're going to burn yourself out.
Yes, you will spend your forces, and you need to have good order forces
to do anything.
At the end of the game to be able to secure the victory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's really, I found this to be a real tactical puzzle.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that concept of you had a set of things you were trying to do, I had a set of things I was trying to do. We had the same mechanics.
Yeah.
And they integrated and worked very well together, but there were choices for each of us. And I find that stuff fascinating. A standard CRT is great. You look at your odds, you roll a die, you get a modifier or 2, and bam, you're disordered, you're reduced.
Oh, I take a reduction and I have to retreat or whatever.
But it reminds me a little bit of that desperate defense concept in Mark Simonich's games, where you can take some extra losses to hold a point.
Whereas this is the reverse. You can say, I'm
not taking that.
I can't afford to take the losses. I'd rather cede some ground.
Yeah, it's just...
But the further you get into the game, the more precious that ground is. And you're like...
Yeah, and it's just, once again, it's about choices of how you're going to use your limited capability.
Yeah.
Most of my units had 10 power, 10 combat factors. And so when I attacked you, I almost had 3 or 4 to 1 odds almost every time the first couple of turns.
Yes.
But every time I had to take a loss. So all of a sudden I'm down to a 9 and an 8. And when you hit that magic 7, all of a sudden you're at 2 to 1.
And I've started getting some of my reinforcements coming in, and they're fresh, and it's like, I got to do some of that all over again.
And you got to withstand that wave. So it's really interesting. I did like also that there's a lot of maneuver choices here.
Yeah, I was surprised at how some of this kind of works out.
Yeah.
Because basically the setup is, everyone's kind of in big long lines.
It's kind of a static line.
And the French launch a massive surprise attack, basically overwhelming the Germans.
Yeah.
And on day 1, they retreated
5 miles or something.
Yeah, I think it was 1.2 miles or something per
Okay.
hex. I can't remember. Maybe it says that.
So this is probably 10, 12 miles
Does
then.
it say?
Maybe 15.
Yeah, but all the progress that they made half of it on day 1.
Yeah.
And the last 4 or 5 days was inching forward. But you do that, and so you've got all these pretty strong, fresh French forces against just the stragglings of the Germans, and it's all at a division and regimental level.
Yeah.
And so you got these big units. You push forwards. You're dropping artillery bombardments, and you're driving them back. And so, a little hole here or there in the lines makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And just you start to see in games like this. Anytime you have lines of troops, almost regardless of the period, when the holes start to appear, you push troops through to exploit those gaps.
Yep.
And it's like some aspects of warfare never change.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things. And so, I might, if I lose a unit or if I'm forced to retreat back real far, then if I've got, the French have got good ordered units, in the maneuver phase, those guys can kind of slip on through. You can start putting wedges into these things. You can swing guys around if you force people into awkward positions. There is a surprise, this isn't just I roll some dice, you roll some dice, a couple of guys die, no one moves.
Yeah.
It's a short 5-day battle, but there's enough movement in here for you to have some cool things and tricks that you can do.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. The other thing, and you kind of covered it, but the terrain is just so very key.
Yeah.
As the Entente, you don't want to be attacking into certain things like ravines,
right?
Because they give you negative modifiers.
Yep, I've got a defensive bonus, and you can't send tanks in.
Yeah, they don't work in ravines. So as the defenders, the Germans, you want to kind of set that line up in those ravines because that's very powerful. And I love when, because that's what military strategy is about. It's about using the forces at your disposal, the assets you have, like heavy artillery, and they had air supply, air kind of attacks, basically limited, but using that in addition to the terrain to win the day. Many of the great battles of history had, Little Round Top and
Right.
Cemetery Ridge. Those are ones that many of us know, but this has the same concept. So I find that fascinating. I thought it was well done. And frankly, this was one of the more exciting World War I games that we've played in quite a while,
Sure,
I thought.
I know what you
it was a
mean by
little
that,
more
yeah.
dynamic than... But those strategic level games, those are fantastic. They just don't have this crunchiness.
It's a very different style of game.
Yes,
to something
absolutely.
like Paths of Glory.
I was glad we played this. As we were playing, I'm like, oh, this was really fun. And it was
Yes.
interesting and really kept my attention as I studied the CRT and tried to understand what I was trying to do. But I really enjoyed this game. And we talked about it early. I cannot wait to see what are they going to do with it now.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I was...
Maybe they already have it on CPO or...
I think them. I can't remember. I feel like
Okay.
there might be.
Okay.
And I feel like I should know. I
Right.
think I may have been told at some point. Maybe. In my brain, I feel like that's the case. But
Yeah.
there is more coming from this. But the game itself, I was reading through the rules and looking at the play aids. And the play aids in this game are very good.
They are.
You can kind of read the rules once and basically play off the play aids.
Yeah.
Because they're detailed. There's like 5 of them.
Yep.
There's a terrain effects one. There's some combat modifiers.
A
there's
sequence of
the
play.
sequence of play is this. All right. This is what I want from a sequence of play. By the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you play this game, this to me is the gold standard of the type of sequence of play I want.
Because it has what you're doing, and then it specifically references in the rule book
Yes.
the location.
And also has a mini blurb.
Yep.
With a so like you can almost play directly off of this.
After reading the
Almost.
rule book, it kind of jogs your memory, and okay, I know how to do this.
And I don't know. I appreciate it. I love it. It was really, really good.
Yeah.
But just know that this game, it had, like, that's not a small sequence of play. It's double-sided, by the way. And
Yeah.
there's a combat sequence of play as
Very
well.
involved.
So there's just lots of steps. Once
Yep.
you start getting into it, you'll know, like, oh, some of these steps I'm not doing because I don't want to launch any assaults, or I don't have any artillery assets left at the end of the day, so I'm not doing anything on my PM in that phase. Oh, I don't want to do any fallbacks because I don't, so you get through it quite quickly eventually, but
because of that, this is a longer game.
yeah, there's a lot of structure to it.
Yeah.
And I when we first started playing, I said it reminded me a little bit of Silver Bayonet, which is one of my favorite Vietnam games. Like, the play is completely different, but that game is also quite structured.
Yeah.
Like, the sequence of play has lots of little steps
Like
into it.
offensive artillery, defensive artillery.
But it provides you with lots of choices and opportunities to use your assets instead of just like, it give you a +1 to attack. Great.
Yeah.
Like, that's what some games kind of hand-waved and that stuff, but here you get, there's more tactical implementations of the assets you have. And I love that in a game. It works well in this hex encounter situation as well, but I just know that this is, it's a detailed game. It's a detailed game.
We called it crunchy. It is very crunchy because you got to think about a lot of things. You mentioned the assets. That there are lots of it. There's tank assets.
Yeah.
We the Entente have little tank counters, and they don't add combat factors to combat.
They add
a
modifiers,
DRM, which I thought was very novel. And then when they are spent, like at the end of the day,
they reduce.
You reduce them, and
The modifier just gets lessened for next
so
time.
but you can't rely on those the entire game.
Well, and if you put all of your starting ones out on the first day in the morning, they'll all be reduced in the afternoon,
and that was
all gone by the end of day 2.
And I think that was
what many coming in.
Yep, that's what I said to myself. I'm like, Grant, you had about 8 tanks. You probably should have put only 3 or 4 out.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning, the Entente kind of has the advantage.
Yes.
They have lots of artillery. They have lots of benefits. They can ignore terrain during that first assault.
Yeah, so you almost don't need all
Nope.
the tanks.
But I put them out
get by on your
because I
infantry.
didn't really know that.
Yeah.
Just like you kind of made a couple errors in setting up and defending the roads.
Yes.
I made some couple offensive errors. But I love games like that because
Yeah.
we're going to go back and fix that.
And in the playbook, they actually call out, there's like, advice for the German player.
Got
advice
it.
For the... And so some of that stuff's in there, but like, you know, it's a game where it's okay to make mistakes and kind of butcher your way through your first play of it. You'll learn a lot of things so that when you play it the second time, you'll both be much more successful and probably much more confident in what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And executing it better and doing it well.
One of the other things and we mentioned this as we were playing, counter density's pretty low. You only have maybe 20, 25 units in the entire game.
Yeah.
And you're only going to start with, I think I started with maybe 15 of mine and got another 10 as the game went on. You had a few more to start and really only have, well, you had quite a few stacks near the end of the game, but...
Yeah, so there's a lot of markers in this
There
game.
are, and it's a little bit of fatigue.
Most of your combat units, in reality, is you're going to have one in each hex.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might have an HQ in there, you might have a couple of your smaller units stacked together, but you have to kind of stretch yourself and build those lines. You kind of have to do that.
Oh,
so you're not getting stacked tons of counters, but you know, if you're reforming and you're retreating, you know, and somehow miraculously you're trying to like do something else, you can end up with a couple markers.
Yeah.
So it can, you know,
get a little fatiguing. But the other thing I
things.
really liked about, you know, not a lot of units, but then you had these remnants.
Yeah, the remnants were nice.
So as units kind of got under half their strength,
it's only Germans. And
got down to one.
Yeah, if they had one strength point left, and you just replace them with a remnant marker, so then you don't have to have the shaken markers or anything like that. It's just it
was
just
cool.
cleans things up.
It cleaned it up, and I thought it was an interesting. But you also could choose to make remnants, or even bring remnants back together to form a stronger unit.
Them, yeah.
There were just some good choices there. I found that interesting in the scope of the game and the pieces and the counters. I just thought it was, I don't know, very interesting. The other concept I really enjoyed was that prepared concept.
Yes. But that was... this game felt... There were so many cool parts of it that were like, oh, what a great World War I concept.
Yeah.
Just, like, you cannot launch an assault unless you have prepared to do so.
Yep, you have to form up, and you have to
bring up all the ammunition,
command and control.
and
you want your
bombardment
bombardment
ready to go again.
And there's this concept where if you haven't moved, you know, too much, you can spend some of your movement points to get up next to an enemy unit and do a prepared. So it's almost like you're coming together. It's like a cohesion check. In some, like you mentioned, Silver Bayonet.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it's been a while.
No, yeah.
There's like a cohesion check.
And if you mess that up,
you can't do certain things.
Yeah, specifically the Vietnamese and that, like the NVA.
Yeah.
If you fail that cohesion check, your attacks are just pathetic.
Yeah. So that concept's kind of here, because if you can't spend your movement points to do these prepared attacks, you can't do assaults.
Yes.
All you can do is the plink, plink, you know,
can't even do that.
Limited attack.
That costs the same amount.
Well, that's true.
Yes. But and the limit, you can do these the limited improvised attacks are not as powerful. They're not as strong.
And that's what I was talking about, the plink plink thing. You can do the limited attack if you don't have a prepared marker, but it doesn't do very much.
No, it costs the same amount. You still have to get one of those.
Oh, you're right. You have to put the 4 movement points. You're right.
And so I
forgot that.
It's better to wait for the next turn and get the prepared marker.
Right.
Unless if you get counterattacked, you're going to lose the prepared marker.
Yep.
Or
if you get bombarded, you can lose that prepared marker.
If you get disrupted, it looks... But I love that. There's choices are there, and it's the whole, I launch a big attack, I'm going to, you guys make a retreat, and then I've got to then make an advance, but I can't advance too far.
Because then I can't get a prepared marker.
If I want to prepare an attack, or I can advance a really long way, but I won't be able to launch an attack on my next turn.
Right.
And I just, that decision space is so cool because it then makes doing a rearguard action so much more interesting.
I agree. Yeah.
So much more interesting than just, I move back 3 spaces.
Yep.
I move back 3 spaces.
Yep.
In this one, you can optionally fall back.
Yep. To reform.
And so you're then counting hexes, because I need to get a certain distance away from you, so that you have to expend more than half your movement points, so that you can't prepare an attack immediately.
It's very
get
interesting.
On me. I just think it's... That stuff was so cool.
Yeah. And there were some errors that I think you and I made during those first couple turns, because we didn't...
Oh, I didn't fall back far enough, so you were able to just do that massive assault
right on
and
you again.
Follow it up almost immediately,
Yep.
and I basically lost the game immediately having done that.
Yeah, it kind of opened the lines up, and then I was able to blitz around the corners.
But it's such an interesting lesson to have learned in this system, because you're like, okay, I want to see enough ground where you cannot organize yourself to launch another attack.
Right.
And I will, in turn, then be prepared to maybe launch small counter-offensives and to prepare my defenses.
And
get
you don't
some good terrain.
And you don't necessarily have the power to do that, but you can do it in key spots and really cause some trouble.
Yeah, I need you to expend yourself. You've worn down some of your own strength points through attrition, and then I might be able to do like, oh, so my reinforcements came in. They can launch a very pointed counterattack at some weak units. Bam, those guys are spent. They now can't help you win the game anyway. Some of that stuff is so interesting.
The artillery was also pretty cool, because you get a couple of different types that can target different, the heavy, it was like anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? The medium, it was only within 5 spaces, I believe, of
your HQs.
Of the HQs. And basically what those do is... it's like attacking with one combat factor. You don't ever want to just do it with one. You want to combine and do like a 3 bombard.
You drop a couple of mediums and a heavy in one space.
Yeah.
Now you're rolling on the much better table.
And you're going to do some damage.
Yeah.
You're really trying to just disrupt. It doesn't really do...
You're not going to kill anyone.
Yeah, you're not going to kill anyone, but that disruption gives you a bonus when you're attacking them. Or disorganization, I think
yes.
Or reforming, or whatever. There were several different terminologies.
It's all
that
levels
used. Disorganization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that artillery was very cool, and it was, once again, a resource I had to think about. I had to manage it. You can't carry it over.
Right.
So you got to hold on to it and shoot it all at once and make it impactful, or do you just take a chance and roll a bunch of dice, hoping to roll a 6?
Do you pepper the whole line, trying to roll 6s, or do you dump... half of it into like one space to say like, I will break this little hole in this line, and I will pour troops through.
Yeah, so I don't know, just really cool charts, by the way, as well. I'm trying to...
Yes, right.
Yeah,
there.
I mean, if you're doing a 4 bombard, you're going to do some damage.
Yeah.
A reduction and a disorganization, that's almost guaranteed.
Yes, but you have to commit so much
to
that. And you don't have a lot of those resources. You
3
really
or
don't.
4 of those, so you really can't do that often. I took the bent that I was going to pepper the line.
Yes.
And actually, I rolled many 6s. I think I rolled 3 or 4.
That was pretty wild.
And did those disorganizations, which then gave me a follow-up bonus when I attacked. I don't know. Loved that. I loved how it was done. I mean, you can do any number of ways for artillery. You make it a DRM, or, this was a good implementation of, I think, that resource in the basis of this game. I just thought it all worked very well together.
Yeah, I think about World War I games, and I think when you start talking about things come to people's mind, and it's like trenches and whistle blowing, attrition, artillery, and like European aristocrats.
Yeah,
and you don't have the aristocrats in this game, but you got everything else, and it checks all those boxes.
But there's some maneuver, though, here, too.
Yes.
So because it's late, 1918, 1919, it was a little more maneuver.
Yes. But you feel, I don't know, like the attrition in this is very real. Mm-hmm. You all sat there like, oh man, my like 10 strength guy is now down to a 7. If he gets down to a 5, he's basically done.
Yeah.
Like he can't do
spent.
anything.
Isn't that what they call that? Spent.
Like he can't attack anymore.
Yep.
And here's me with my like level 3 guys who are just like dying immediately down to like 1s, and they're just like, it's just
hanging on.
Like one company with rifles left with like supported by like a machine gun, and they're just it feels that attrition is in a game like this, which is amazing because just a totally different scale from the other games that we've
Yeah.
played so far, and you still have those elements that should be there because they're important, and they are. But I don't know. I thought some of the mechanisms in this were very cool.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I hadn't seen before. I like the whole, like on the CRT where there's X results where the attacker gets to choose how many losses they take
that was
between one or
fantastic.
two. And it, stuff like that, and the way that you get all these voluntary fallbacks and the order in which those occur in your turn is very interesting as well.
Yeah.
You like fall back after the assaults are done, then you get a maneuver phase, and then I get to fall back again.
Yeah.
That's. But if you do all that, you're ceding a hole on ground.
You can't give it all up because ultimately in the game there's this line of VP hexes.
Yeah, it's not a big map.
And then there's this line of auto loss spaces that if the Entente ever control those at the end of their operations, it's over.
Yeah.
So you can only fall back so far.
That first turn, you're going to kind of do that. And after, I don't know, I just think that this was such an interesting game.
Definitely.
With some mechanics that were new to me, or ways of thinking about, what conflict looks like it was very interesting.
Well, and more often than not, Legion Wargames products are always, I think, well done.
Yeah.
They most of their games we've played, we've really, really enjoyed. And this one had a great looking map. The player aids, there were 5 or 6 of them, fantastic. I thought the rule book you said was organized well.
The rules were very clear.
Yep.
The organization was the one thing that I
wanted to improve upon.
Yeah, it's just like how to resolve combat is like right at the end of the book.
Yeah, put it
which I was just not expecting.
Right.
But they go, things that are explained like 2 or 3 times as the rules get more and more explicit as the rule book goes on. But like they're very clear. There was no vagaries in there.
Right.
There was never a time that I had a rules question that wasn't answered in there.
Well, and I felt like we were able to talk through it even if there was a simple question. Yeah. We talked through it and it made sense. So, and this is a 2021 game. So this is a new game.
Yeah.
And I look forward to these other Volume 2, Volume 3, whatever they end up doing.
The counters look great, the map's great. What I'll do is I'll show you, some of how this works, and we'll go through as much as we can. And then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So here's a look at the map. As you can see, it is a smaller size map. 22 by 34 would kind of be all the way out here, and this is the cartography of it. So we've got our little tracks for our air superiority, heavy artillery, and medium artillery, and there's a turn track over here as well, and a couple holding boxes for your reinforcements that come in. So the game itself, we're going to have a quick look at the sequence of play, and this is dual-sided. So we have, in each day, there are 3 turns. There's an AM, a PM, and a night turn. So AM, you kind of go through and do the whole of the AM. Then the PM is basically just identical to the AM. And then the night phase is a little bit different, basically. And there's different modifiers if you try to do combats and bombardments and things. But basically, at the beginning of a turn, you check your assets. They're kind of listed here. Of medium artillery, heavy artillery, and air. And you're going to roll a die for each point of those to see if they're available in the morning or in the afternoon, evening. So you're not quite sure the assets you'll have available in each of your turns, but you might get to heavy artillery, a couple medium artillery in the morning, and then you might get nothing in the afternoon, or you might get one of each kind of a thing. Then what you're going to do is you go through this quite structured sequence of play. And so the Entente always goes first, and then after that the Germans go through. And it's this whole thing, then it switches to the other player. There are some special kind of first turn things. So the original trenches start here in this area, this whole big line down here. All of the Entente forces are along this line, and the Germans kind of defending. And there's a massive French push, basically. They will drive a lot of the Germans back and force them into retreats, from which they'll probably do some voluntary fallbacks and form another line here. And then after that very first turn and through the next few days, the fighting becomes much more bitter, a bit more static. Like the movement then crunches for the next 4 days over just this kind of second half of the map, basically. And they're just grinding, and it's attritional. But On a turn, you would bring in any reinforcements that you might have in the reinforcement boxes. The Entente player has a number of these tank battalions, and so we've got a couple of them here. So the tank battalion, it's got a couple Saint-Chamons on it. This one does. It has a reduced side with just the one tank. You assign those to various corps that you've got, and you give them to a specific division. You can then, on a subsequent turn, you could move them to a different division that's adjacent to them. They drive and help the person next to them. Or you can hold them back in this holding box up here, and then commit them on a subsequent day. So you don't just kind of blow all your tanks in the first turn. You can do that as well. So there's a little kind of phase where you do that. Then we talked about a little bit of the asset commitment. So you declare your bombardments at this point. So each of your core HQs have an artillery piece listed on them. They can shoot basically up to 5 hexes away. And then you also have these kind of more generic army-based ones. So we've got, at the army level, we've got 2 medium artilleries and 1 heavy artillery. Medium artillery can fire 5 hexes away from any of the corps. So you can just say, we're going to commit them to 30 corps, and we're going to go here. Or the heavy artillery can just drop anywhere on the board, because those guns are such long range. Usually you're only going to get one of them in a day at most. So what you're doing then is you're going to commit those. So you might say, well, 30 corps, they're going to shoot their artillery, and they're going to drop it right here. But we're also going to have 30 corps. They're going to use one of the artillery, and this is the German side. You do it with the French one, but they're going to drop one of the army level artilleries. So we've got 2 artillery points, and then maybe we'll also commit a heavy artillery here as well, so we can get that 2 all the way up to a 3 here. And then, so if and when it does come to it, when we resolve our bombards, we're now going to be rolling on this extremely good table rather than this very, very bad table. So you kind of commit all these assets, and then the non-phasing player is going to then do some defensive bombardments if they so choose. So you drop a bunch of these. Then the non-phasing player, so the Germans at this point might say, well, we're going to do counter battery fire. We're going to do some defensive artillery. They can spend some of their assets. They resolve their bombardments, and then so you can basically negate some of these things that are going to happen to you, or they won't be able to launch assaults and things like that. And then you get into the assault phase. So we just blow the whistles, send the troops out of the trenches. We're going to go over the top. We're going to resolve all of our combats. And we'll just look at a couple simple ones here of kind of what that looks like. Here, he's pathetic. They're all kind of pathetic, this one here. We'll just pick this little guy here. Cool, sounds good. So, let's say we've got a whole bunch of artillery on this guy. We'll give him a 3. I know that's not legal, but we're going to do it. So, the first thing you do is you resolve that bombardment after you pick a lead unit. If you've got multiple units attacking, one of them's a lead attacking unit, one's a lead defending unit. Most of the time it's going to be 1-on-1. Sometimes you get 2-on-1, but most of the time it's 1 unit on 1 unit, especially when you've got these big lines and their forces are fairly evenly distributed. So, we're going to drop 3 points of artillery on them. And so you consult your little bombardment table, and we look for the DRMs. Firing into a hex adjacent to a friendly prepare marker during the assault segment. Yes, we do have a prepare marker on our French 48th Division, so great. Target hex contains a city or town. Well, they're in a city or town, so that negates our +1 from the prepare marker. Target not adjacent to a friendly combat unit, and that's not the case. And firing during a night turn. Well, we'll just pronounce it a day turn. So we did have a +1, they have a -1, so it's all going to cancel out. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll our die here, and we rolled a 5, which is good, especially if we can actually level the 3 points of artillery on them. 3 down to a 5, we do 1, and then a big D. So 1, Defender suffers 1 loss. Great. So he's got 3 here. That's his 3 strength points. And kind of like Great Battles of History, he just put a little -1 on here, but this is actually strength points rather than any disruption. So he's now only 2 strength points. He's 3 -1. So then we also look at the big D, and it says, all defending units increase their disruption by 1 level, but not lower than disorganized. So we are going to increase our disruption level. So currently he's good order. He doesn't have any markers on him. The first level is RFM, which stands for reforming. So they kind of scattered the troops a bit. They're a little bit disorganized. They're trying to come back together again and get their defenses set. But that's good for us because that now gives us a modifier for our assault combat. So when we look at assault combat, which is the next thing that we're going to do, we look at a few different things here. So it is an odds-based ratio. So I'm a 10 -2, so I'm an 8, and there are a 3 -1 is a 2. So we look at our 4-to-1 odds here, and we're looking, this is the assault resolution. So we're looking at our 4-to-1 chart, and we look for some modifiers. And the modifiers that we're going to check are our aggression, our aggressiveness. So we have 2 stars, and that's just kind of a measure of how well trained, how well organized, how aggressive we are as troops. So 2 is kind of average, 3 is really good, 1 is frankly not good. So we look at the difference. The net difference gives us a positive modifier. So with 2 and 1 we get a +1. And then we also have a +1 because they're disorganized, they are reforming. And then, however, they are also in terrain. So our little town gives them, I believe, a -2. It's not great. Yeah, -2. So we got these positives, they got the negatives, they all kind of wash out. So we're just looking at 4-to-1, and we roll on the table. And we roll the 4. 4-to-1, get ourselves a 4. And this is, again, the coolest part of this game. So we have x/x small d, and at this point of the game we ignore the little superscript. So big X/big X, if we look over here, it says the attacker chooses if x is equal to 1 loss or x is equal to 2 losses. And I just think this is such a cool concept, because if I go down to -5, then I'm at half my strength and I'm spent. As a combat fighting force, I'm useless, I can't attack anymore, I'm not worth any victory points, I can't secure any of these or get off the end of the map and win the game. So I have to be very careful about losing too many guys, but I could try to kill this unit outright if I do so. And so I'm faced with the decision, do I go really hard to try and kill that German unit, or do I go soft and maintain myself, but also, you know, I have to fight another day, basically. So the choices are very interesting. So let's say we say, screw it, we're going to do the 2 losses. So I'm going to go from a -2 to a -4. So not great. But I force upon the Germans 2 losses. The first of which they have to accept, so they go to -2. The second loss is going to eliminate this unit outright. So they can't afford to do that necessarily. So what they can choose to do is they can optionally ignore 1 and only 1 loss, and instead retreat space. So you can optionally, now you're vacating a victory point, you're vacating the terrain, is it worth it? Again, decisions that the Germans have to make. Lots and lots of decisions to be made in this game. That's what we like in a war game. On top of that, we had a small d, so we lose our RFM and we get flipped to our disorganized side as well. So really, really, really bad. We don't want to do any of that. But that's, you know, a big combat like that. That's kind of what combat looks like. And this is why this game can take a little bit of time, because if you look at the combat sequence of play, it's a whole page, and you can get it. You want to make sure you don't miss anything. And you're going to do that for basically every combat that you've prepared. After you've done all of that, and we can advance after we attack if we're so inclined, which we do because we want to take that victory point. But then you kind of flip back to your little sequence of play. So we did our assault. Now we've got our first non-phasing voluntary fallback. Now, I'm in a real bad situation with these guys, but I can voluntarily fall back any number of spaces I want in a straight line. So we're going to go 1, 2, we'll go back into this. So now I'm in some good terrain again. I ceded a lot of territory, not great, but that territory was going to kill me anyway. And you can do that with all of your guys, and they get a little retreat marker when they do so. That's important, right? So the retreat marker is very important for later on. I've done all of my fallbacks. I do it, with everyone on the line after I've done all those attacks. Because then it goes to a maneuver phase. So any of the Entente units that aren't marked with retreats, shocked, or they're not spent, can then maneuver. They've got 8 points to spend. And this is where you start to get into, we're going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and they've got 8 points. You spend your 3, and then we're going to spend 4 points to get a prepared marker, which means we can assault them next turn. Or, what I can do is I can spend those 4 to get a limited or improvised attack marker. Now, an assault, so the prepare marker means that I can assault on my next turn. But, in between that, there's a whole enemy phase where they might attack me back, I might lose my marker, or I can do this kind of limited improvised assault, which is kind of a follow-on attack if you think about it in that way. And that's going to trigger just in a little bit on my turn again. But that only comes after they have an opportunity to fall back even further. So you can kind of outwit and kind of outpace each other, but the Germans will come right up against it, because if a French unit gets off the board, or if they occupy any of these starred spaces, they're going to win the game. So you can only cede so much ground before you start just losing units. And and the steps and the order of the steps are just so interesting. Once you've French done all their stuff, or the Entente I should say, then all the Germans do all the same things, and you might not do anything, because you might be covered in retreats, you might be a whole bunch of shock guys, and you're like, I just got to try and recover guys, and not launch any counterattacks. That'd be nonsense, because I'm so weak, for example. Then it goes to a PM turn, you do it all again in the afternoon, and it goes to a night turn, where it'll be a little bit calmer typically. You're not going to do as many effective bombardments and assaults because you have negative modifiers and all of that stuff, because it's dark and can't see anything. And then you move on to the next day, you'll get some reinforcements coming in. You might be able to freshen up your troops overnight. They might, they're going to mutually reduce some of their disruptions that are going on. They might be in better fighting shape. You can reconstitute, if you've got a couple of these like shaken remnants, you can reconstitute them into shaken versions of regiments instead. So they're just a little bit stronger, but it spread your lines a little bit less thin. So it's a very, 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 very cool game. It is structured, so it's easy to follow this, but you want to make sure you go through it and you don't skip any steps. And the order in which the things happen is very, very important, because it gives you so many interesting decision points, right? Oh, I assaulted. Do I advance? If I advance, am I opening myself up and exposing myself to isolation? Well, I want to fall back as the Germans. How far do I fall back? I got to fall back far enough where they can't just move in and immediately attack me again. So I need to fall back an extra bit further, so they have to spend more movement points so that they don't have 4 movement points to be able to attack again. But if I do that, am I ceding too much ground? Am I giving up too many victory points? Am I just backing myself up against the wall? And then, if I don't do that, then I open myself up to an attack. But then do the French want to attack with these limited or improvised attacks, which fundamentally are not as powerful? The results on them have a lot of zeros on them. They're not as much of a sure thing. And if they don't do that, or if they do that, they spend all their MPs moving a little bit, getting a marker. Well, what if I fall back again in my subsequent phase before they're able to execute their limited attacks? Then they've wasted all their attacks, and then they're kind of sat out in the middle of nowhere. I'm able to counterattack on my turn by charging up and breaking back as well, and taking that ground back. Just such interesting things. But what we'll do is we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the map. This is brand new basically. I mean, it's been out for like 2 months, I think.
I don't know that I've seen anybody really unbox it. I don't know that I've seen many people playing it online. So
I don't know if that's like, if I say, oh, that's kind of typical of Legion, because Legion makes games that aren't Battle of the Bulge, that aren't Operation Barbarossa. These are games where like you see that I'd never heard of this battle. I'd never heard of it before I played it.
Yep.
But the game was excellent.
Where is it? Where's the battle again? What's
in Soissons?
Soissons. Okay. But yeah. I mean, it's Legion Wargames, small company.
Yes.
The small company that could. I mean, they make really good games.
Truly.
We've more often than not, everything we've played from them, we've really enjoyed. There's been a couple that we didn't get or
weren't for us,
but they were still interesting games.
Yeah.
This late war, World War I, it's just a different feel, and I liked that. I feel like we're playing games that kind of run the gamut of early 1914. It's just a very different thing than 1918, 1919.
What's cool? Yeah, I think what's really cool about this is that you've at this point of the war, you've developed the tank technology.
Yeah.
You've developed the creeping barrages. Basically, you've got airplanes, you've got air support, you've got everything. I'm not sitting here trying to like research or do economy and like, do this stuff, man.
Which is always fun,
yes,
but not
like,
in this.
The Entente's got all the toys and like let's take them out,
line it up and
roll,
play it.
Let's roll.
And this is one I'm not sure that we've played it one time. I think this is going to be a fairly even. I really do. I feel like this is going to be a fairly even competition, and with skillful placement and good maneuver, I think this can come down to the wire almost every game.
Yes.
There's going to occasionally be a breakthrough. A couple of your units, I had a +3 modifier, and I rolled like a 5 or a 6.
Yeah, and
that's pretty much auto.
You start getting onto like parts of the table where you're like, ugh.
Yeah, but it's like that's almost auto death. There's nothing you can do about it. But more often than not, you're like taking one loss here and you're just surviving. That's all you want to do. And you want a line of guys, and that's very possible to maintain and then counterattack when you have the opportunity.
Where appropriate.
And you do have reinforcements that come in like turn 3, 4, and 5, and turn 5 is pretty big.
And those
you get a bunch of units.
You start getting into the mid and late game things. The troops that you get are so important.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be fresh, you're going to be able to maneuver with them, and they're going to plug holes in your lines where you had like one little, shocked remnant, and you're like, get that guy out of here.
Yeah, move him out and put in three combat factors. They're not huge units, but they're
by
healthy.
That point of the game, a lot of the French ones are
busted.
down to like 6
5
or 7.
or 6, yeah.
Like you're not getting good odds there either.
I don't know. This was a very good implementation of a very good system in an interesting battle at the end of World War I, and to me gave me that thematic feeling of what the tanks and it just was very well done. I really enjoyed this game.
Yes,
this is probably going to be in my top 10. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. This is pretty good.
Like, I genuinely, we could set this up and play this again right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And it would probably be an even better game.
It would be a better game because we figured out the strategies.
Yeah, like, tactically, I would make slightly more sound decisions. And,
I would do some things differently too,
and it would flow a bit quicker as well.
We'd move at a better clip.
All that being said, this is not a short game.
I mean, you've got 6 turns with 3 segments in each turn.
Yeah.
The night turn is fairly simple.
It can be.
You can't really do much because you're -1 for most everything.
Yeah, you might do some moves and bits and pieces,
some minor stuff, but
prepare.
Each phase is going to take you a while. This is probably a 8 to 12 hour game.
So the back of the box says 12+ hours.
Yeah.
If you play the whole thing, which sure. It could be that long.
Yeah.
Early on, I don't know. You do pick it up though. If you've had war game experience,
you'll get in this and pick it up.
Yeah, you get in it and you start to roll, and then the second time you play it, you're going to be less and less in the rules, and it's going to go along. But yeah, it's not. This isn't like a 3-hour affair. It takes.
You're going to have to. This is one you're going to set up. You can play it solo. Just play both sides, and I think that's very well suited to that. And you're going to play it over a 3 or 4 day period. 2 or 3 hours here, 2 or 3 hours there. While you got the TV on in the background or whatever,
Yeah, there's no hidden information in this.
Nope.
It's kind of just like You just go through the sequence of play.
Yeah.
Entente does all this stuff. Germans do all this stuff.
Yep.
You know, great. Next turn.
Yeah.
And so it would be. There's no reason you couldn't solo this. And it's not a full 22 by 34 map either, which is also nice. So
Kind of a 3/4 map, right?
yeah. And so it doesn't. I don't know. You've got a lot of play aids, but you know you can kind of set this up and play around it.
Small
with yourself
footprint, though, generally.
very very easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. The maps, and even though it's a smaller paper map, half of it's taken up with tracks anyway.
Yeah.
The actual map space you're playing on, not that big.
No, maybe 20 hexes by 20 hexes. I mean, that's maybe a little more. But yeah, it's not huge.
No,
and
no.
That's good. Very charming game. I liked it. I'm glad we played it.
Yes. I am excited for more from this series, but I'm also excited to revisit this again.
Yep.
And give this one another go, just to maybe do it a bit more justice.
Right.
Like
Defend it more historically.
Yeah, I was very bad at this game.
Well, we just made a couple critical errors, and you know, the tactician that I am, I took supreme advantage of that.
I rolled so many sixes on purpose.
I was 4-1 odds, rolled bunches of sixes. Yeah,
but yeah,
it's very skilled.
But there is, you know, some games you kind of play it and you're like, great, I kind of know that game. This one, I've played it. I've made some horrendous mistakes.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to be, you know, much more informed next time. And I feel that way, like the Dark Valley by Ted Race is the same way. You kind of got to play it. The first couple of times you play it, you're going to be like, oh, still through some growing pains. And then, like, you know, you get more and more out of the game. And when it's a single kind of, like a pitched battle like this, if it can do that, I think that's a big win as well. Yeah. You know, playing the same battle over and over again, probably not everyone's cup of tea. But if there's a lot to learn and develop in your strategies, that's a big win for me as far as, you know, investing in a game and being able to play it, you know, more than once, basically. Yeah. So, Decisive Victory 1918 Volume 1, Soissons.
That's
Wargames. Yes, this was... go and buy this game and play it. If you like World War One, go buy it. If you don't like World War One,
go buy it.
This is the World War One game for you, because you can just pretend it's not World War One. Yeah. And it's a hex encounter game with battle lines, and you'll be very... You know, it's...
I do think it feels World War One, but there's some interesting...
But like,
it's late World War One, so
it is a hex encounter war game. Yeah, and so there's no reason that you wouldn't like this. Yeah. So yes, check it out. Appreciate you guys very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from BlazeAid.com.
And I'm Grant.